He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
This is Mediawatch. I'm Colin Peacock. Now, choice is supposed to be a good thing for TV viewers, and of course it is, but when you're paying for it, it's a pain, and it might not be all that good for the actual shows we like. HBO is the latest one to offer its top stuff direct to us in return for a subscription, but are we, and the whole TV business, now oversubscribed with streaming choices? Also, we look at how one simple gesture by the Prime Minister ended up being heavily analysed and pretty heavily mocked in our media.
That post was over the top.
That's later on, but the focus today is on immigration. It's a hot political issue in many countries right now, and part of a pattern that seems to be shifting support for political parties, and one here is determined to put it on the election year agenda.
I think the UK has got lots of problems. I think we can all see that, can't we? You know, the economy, crime, education, health, it's all not in a great place at the moment.
A recent European industry summit at a chateau in Belgium wasn't expected to be headline news, and business reporter Ed Conway from Sky News in the UK probably wasn't expecting to make any news outside of his own broadcaster's business bulletins from there last week, unless, of course, one of the heavy hitters in attendance might say something unexpected. And that's exactly what did happen when Ed Conway spoke to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, co-founder of the global chemical company INEOS.
If you really want to deal with the major issues of immigration, with people opting to take benefits rather than working for a living, if you want to deal with that, then you're going to have to do some things which are unpopular and show some courage.
Now, Sir Jim didn't think the government of Sir Keir Starmer in the UK had done much of that. But these days, men of means in Britain speaking out about the government is not out of the ordinary, or about immigration. Indeed, several business billionaires backed Brexit, in which immigration policy was a big issue, and some say the decisive one in that British referendum back in 2016. And some are now backing Brexiteer Nigel Farage's anti-immigration political party Reform, which is surging in the UK's opinion polls right now. But Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments on immigration last week went straight into the headlines when he told Sky News this.
Huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, the UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million.
Colonised by immigrants was inflammatory all on its own, but there were a few other things at play here as well. Sir Jim Ratcliffe was off by about 10 million on the UK's population growth, which is a bit of a surprising error for a business tycoon with a ruthless focus on budgets and bottom lines. And when it broadcast that, Sky News creditably set the statistical record straight soon after.
According to the Office of National Statistics, the UK population in 2020 was not 58 million, it was 67 million, and now it is 70 million.
A further fact check by the BBC revealed only 6.5 million Britons not working today receive benefits, not 9, though 10 million Britons of working age get some sort of state assistance, such as housing benefit payments. But adding to the outrage was the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his money migrated to Monaco for tax reasons, not paying tax being the main one, so critics called him out for hypocrisy as an economic migrant himself. But the main reason this made major headlines in the UK and elsewhere is that Sir Jim is also the part owner of Manchester United Football Club, one of the best-known sporting brands all around the world, many of whose players and staff and supporters are immigrants or children of immigrants. And this meant that Sir Jim's colonised comments were aired and condemned on the back pages of the UK newspapers, as well as the front ones. And if this had happened a year ago, New Zealand rugby might have been dragged into this too. For a while, the All Blacks were human billboards for INEOS until it controversially backed out of a signed and sealed sponsorship deal. Life's tough, Sir Jim Ratcliffe himself told the UK's Daily Telegraph at the time, citing INEOS's spiralling debts of almost €12 billion. Now, this was not exactly an apology to the All Blacks, and this week Sir Jim only apologised for offence caused to some people, but The Guardian sports writer Barney Ronay was not surprised at all.
He knows that a slash-and-burn reform government would be good for business. Immigration is just a wedge issue in this dynamic, a way of pressing those buttons. This is pre-electioneering on behalf of the super wealthy.
And it's not just in the UK that immigration has become a political wedge. In Australia, the anti-immigration One Nation Party is polling above 20% nationally now, and last Tuesday, Australian political scientist Jill Shepherd explained that like this on RNZ's The Panel.
That's sort of a febrile environment for a minor party like One Nation to come in and say, hey, you know all those things that you're vaguely concerned about, what if we put them together? And I attribute all of your concerns to this one cause, and that's migration.
And here, the issue of immigration has also been on the political agenda lately and the news agenda, thanks to the proposed free trade deal with India. Now, after setting a target to do a deal by the end of last year, the Prime Minister announced just before Christmas an agreement had been reached with India, but not with New Zealand first and its leader, it seems. He issued a statement almost immediately headed, India FTA, a bad deal for New Zealand. And in it, Mr Peters said a new employment visa, specifically for Indian citizens, was likely to generate far greater interest in Indian migration to New Zealand at a time when we have a very tight labour market. And that night, Mr Peters told Richard Harman, for his subscriber news service Politic, that family members of about 5,000 people on these temporary work visas would be eligible to come to New Zealand too. You go from saying it's one child, that's 10,000 people, to possibly 25,000 or more, Mr Peters told Politic. They're not the most populous country in the world for nothing, Mr Peters added. But noting that New Zealand First statement attracted a stream of racist comments on social media in support of what Mr Peters had said, Richard Harman added this.
It's an open secret around Parliament that Peters wants to campaign this year on immigration.
Well, 2 months on, that's no secret anymore. Late last month, Mr Peters told the Herald's Ryan Bridge show,
and on the question of immigration, which is going to be massive in this matter, the truth is not being told the public. Go and dissect what that means. It means we can have tens of thousands of people getting here of right.
And he wound up that interview with this comment.
Because if we want to be the first world economy that we once were, then we need realists and honest people telling us the true nature of what they've signed up to.
Now, calling your coalition partners dishonest is pretty bold, likewise saying that increased migration is not compatible with a first world economy. The next day, the Prime Minister told reporters this.
Mr Peters says it's going to lead to tens of thousands of people coming here and taking New Zealand jobs. Is that correct?
No, he's wrong.
Why is he going out there and saying that if it's wrong? He's a minister and a cabinet.
Winston and I have different views on this. He opposed the China FTA. He was wrong then. He's wrong on this one too. The reality is in 5, 10, 15 years from now, New Zealand is going to be very, very grateful that we have a very good, comprehensive, high-quality agreement with India.
And the Trade Minister Todd McClay later told RNZ that New Zealand First had pulled support for the India Free Trade Agreement before they'd even secured it. But the problem for the news media was it still wasn't quite clear what we might be about to sign up to with India. Last month, the Herald's Audrey Young reported that a fact sheet released by the Indian government said that the agreement does remove numerical caps on Indian students here. But speaking in Parliament earlier, she said the Trade Minister Todd McClay had said it doesn't. And on the Herald Now Ryan Bridge show on Tuesday last week, Todd McClay wouldn't confirm that.
Can a future government put a cap on student numbers coming to New Zealand from India?
Yes, so we already have the ability to have restrictions through immigration policy on who comes, the number of students and so on, and the FDA preserves that.
So, plenty then for TVNZ's Jack Tame to clarify with the Trade Minister in a long sit-down chat on last Sunday's episode of Q&A.
Is it your expectation that the total number of temporary Indian migrants in New Zealand will increase?
I don't believe it will, or if it does, it will be marginal. So to give you an example, I was before...
There would be no point in having any of these provisions if the number wasn't going to increase, would
No, but it's about working for a period of time.
Sensing the Minister's reluctance to answer yes, Jack Tame had another go.
It must be your expectation that the number of temporary Indian migrants in New Zealand will increase.
Well, people that might come into work in here, so take a nurse that we need in economy.
And then a third go.
Different than all of the
but
others.
you would expect it to increase, surely?
Arguably, let's wait and see.
But that was not what Jack Tame had in mind. Todd McClay told Q&A the free trade agreement doesn't extend the rights of visa holders to bring relatives in, but most temporary migrants, he said, can after a period of time anyway. So Jack Tame then pressed him on when that decision was made, setting out his own timeline, beginning with Winston Peters claiming 20,000 plus new migrants from India might be coming.
In the last 2 weeks, your government has decided that actually, for some reason, this visa that applies only to Indians will mean that people cannot bring their families.
No, so what is going to... Let me finish and then we'll come back to that.
Last month, the Herald's Audrey Young noted that New Zealand First's fortunes were on the up at that time, and she said that Peter's decision to highlight the immigration aspects of the free trade agreement deal may have something to do with that. And this week, TVNZ's first political poll of the year had more good news for New Zealand First.
The party doubling its support from when we polled this time last year. 10 is Winston Peters' lucky number today. He's up 1 point.
Winston Peters himself told TVNZ the party's rise was down to what he called forgotten New Zealanders who were sick and tired of all this globalist stuff. But the India Free Trade Agreement and immigration certainly has resonated with some in alternative media. At the time Winston Peters was sounding the alarm, self-described Christian nationalist William McGimpsey said this on Reality Check Radio and online under the heading, "Is mass immigration tearing at the social fabric of New Zealand?"
All these stories show the problems that occur when people from foreign cultures with different values and ways of life are imported here. Then, of course, there is the India Free Trade Agreement. This deal has important trade-offs, real economic gains for our exporters, but significant migration risks.
McGimpsey suggested we should be reducing migration here following the lead of the US, and he said 20% of people here were not New Zealand citizens and they should be asked to leave the country politely. McGimpsey also cited beaches stripped clean of seafood by Chinese people, and this week New Zealand First Shane Jones announced the government ban on collecting kai moana from rock pools along Auckland's east coast to crack down on what he called turbocharged foraging. And on the platform, host Sean Plunkett had no qualms about asking Shane Jones who was doing that.
Are these issues that are being affected or are the problems being created by recent arrivals to New Zealand?
Oh, look, I've already said in other parts of the media landscape that this is a Peking duck problem. We have groups organised via social media, Chinese language sites.
Shane Jones had indeed used that Peking duck line around the media, and soon after on the platform, Sean Plunkett asked Shane Jones this.
And does it kind of dovetail in with the concerns that you have raised, particularly with the Indian trade deal, about how a certain level of immigration of people with different cultural ideas can actually change a country for the worse?
Yeah, look, I know I'm coming under attack for my remarks. I don't care. The vast majority of New Zealanders, Sean, have been excluded from the debate, from the discussion as to who decided to change the demography of our country. And I don't care if I come on your program or anywhere in New Zealand and I get called out as a racist. You watch me campaign on this issue, buddy.
But immigration is covered as an issue by our news media, as it was at the New Zealand Economics Forum at the University of Waikato last week.
I'm thrilled now to invite the new panellists on for a panel on demographic tipping point, unconstrained immigration. What's the alternative?
That was Josie Pagani, Chief Executive of Child Fund New Zealand and a regular pundit on politics in our media, introducing a session that was addressing unconstrained immigration and the rather clunky question, how do we grow without losing who we are? Josie Pagani pointed to New Zealand's declining fertility rates and then said a recent UN study predicted a halving of the population by the end of this century in more than 22 developed countries. Leading demography expert Professor Paul Spoonley had some stark statistics of his own in that session. He said the fertility rate was 25% below where it needed to be for our population replacement. Only Hamilton, Auckland and Christchurch were really growing, Professor Spoonley said. Tahu Kukutai from the Te Nira Institute for Population Research at the University of Waikato then told the forum this.
You know, an election year, it's so predictable that immigration becomes like a really contested issue, and we get different discourses, which are really internally inconsistent. So on the one hand, we really need skilled migrant labour to fuel our economy, essentially. On the other hand, we don't want migrants. They're changing our country. That's sort of polarised, I think, views on immigration is really unhelpful.
But also, it seems, inevitable. At the same summit, Treasury Secretary Ian Rennie made headlines with warnings of the silver tsunami on its way, and he said 20 to 40% of New Zealand's graduates were now migrating, often in their peak years of productivity. And News Talk ZB host Mike Hosking was impressed by that, though he had a different interpretation of our migration problem.
Immigrants have replaced our kids. We've been dumbed down. Our brightest haven't been replaced with America's brightest or Europe's brightest, but from countries like India and the Philippines. We're exporting scientists and doctors and bringing in nurses and baristas.
But it isn't just scientists leaving and hospo hands coming in. There are, of course, plenty of people with middling work skills in both flows. But unlike Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Mike Hosking offered no numbers that you could check. However, Mike Hosking is definitely not anti-immigration.
Immigration's awesome. I love immigration. But not if it's not of our choosing. We are being forced into this. So the good news, as this has happened comparatively fast if you think about it, not long ago our net gain was in excess of 100,000 a year. We brought them in and the good ones didn't leave. See, I figure we can recapture all of that, but a mindset shift is needed.
But part of that mind shift could be not labelling good ones and bad and being really clear about what you mean. New Zealand's points system has always allowed the immigration bar to be raised and lowered, but it can have unintended consequences. And in the Post this week, columnist Dave Armstrong pointed out that dozens of immigrant bus drivers who rescued Wellington from its recent bus-tastrophe might now have to leave the country at the end of their visas because new higher English language standards brought in recently will be tough to meet.
By all means, spend money to train good, dependable bus drivers from New Zealand, but in the meantime, it seems madness to send perfectly good bus drivers home because they didn't complete the 300-word essay to the standard of a postgraduate university student.
And whether we're breeding bus drivers or brain surgeons here, it's taking longer. Fresh figures out this week also showed that just 14% of births were to mothers younger than 25. In 1995, it was double that. And as the gap between generations grows, generations living together is on the up. On News Talk ZB, Heather Duplessis-Allen called Paul Spoonley to ask if this was immigration at work as well.
Is this just a result of us having increased immigration? So you've got people from countries like India where, for example, that is absolutely fine and it's normal? Or is this actually us, like native New Zealanders, people who've been here for a few generations, also starting to do this?
No, it's us. There is definitely some cultural practices, but no, it's us. We're changing.
The us and them was a little awkward there, but as Paul Spoonley said, in this case, we are becoming a bit more like them anyway. And it also highlights just how few of them are heard when we in the media cover this issue. Last Wednesday, Winston Peters was again raising the temperature with references to national identity in Parliament.
Mr Peters interrupted Green MP Tiano Tuiono's question line in the House this afternoon after Mr Tuiono used the word Aotearoa. The New Zealand First Leader questioned why someone from Rarotonga had changed the country's name without consulting the public.
And for the record, Green MP Tiano Tuiono was born here in New Zealand. Now accused of racism and scapegoating, Winston Peters told Parliament the next day he wasn't sorry, but by then his deputy Shane Jones had gone way further and way cruder on NZME's rural show The Country.
Unfettered immigration is going to fatefully change the trajectory and the character of our nation, and we're not having it. And people are not campaigning on it.
No, you're just being racist. Hey, Shane, some of these Indians who might be migrants here will do the work that some of the drug-addled Northlanders won't do. And I'm not just picking on Northland there.
No, we have drug-addled work-shy neffs everywhere not doing the jobs migrants will do, according to the Country host Jamie Mackay, who also cited Filipinos doing critical work sustaining dairy farming in the south and Catholic churches. But Shane Jones, who Jamie Mackay likes to call the Prince of the Provinces, responded like this.
They are the people that the country needs, but we don't need any more Uber drivers.
Oh, that's very racist.
Mate, just because I said that the people that are plundering all the rock pools around Auckland happen to be from the migrant community, and in a playful way I use the term the Orient Express, doesn't mean that I'm a racist.
Well, stereotyping migrants as seafood plunderers and Uber drivers clearly is not playful, and whether you think it is racist or not, it is a play for political support, and there will be plenty more of this in our media in election year, as New Zealand First is determined to make this an issue. But hopefully our media can sort fact from fiction as we go, and sort fact from the opinions of people in politics, inspired by the successes of people saying the same sorts of things overseas for political support in tense times. Back in the year 2007, TV was going digital all over the world, but not quite so quickly here. And back then, TVNZ executive Andrew Shaw joked about it when he said the state of our telecoms at the time had insulated broadcasters here from competition on the internet.
I mean, it'll take me 2 years to download The Sopranos. Right? I will pass away. I'll be some skull clinging to my desk. I'm just waiting for season 2.
Back then, you had to have a subscription to Sky TV to see the acclaimed HBO show The Sopranos, and other ones like The Wire, which at the time were hailed as among the best series ever made. And the likes of Netflix hadn't bothered to set up here at that time, and just as it had done with live rugby, Sky TV was the one-stop shop for top TV entertainment and movies, stifling demand for streaming video on demand, or SVOD for short. 10 years later, in 2017, TVNZ's Andrew Shaw, who died last year, again bullishly dismissed Netflix as a fad, but at that point more than 1 million Kiwis had subscriptions to Netflix, and Telecom, now known as Spark, was in the game with its own service called Lightbox. Now, in the end, the Sky TV empire struck back in 2019 by buying Lightbox and merging it with its own premium drama service Neon, for which Sky subscribers pay an extra premium for the likes of HBO shows and more. But since then, it's been up against stiff offshore competition like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney+, Apple TV, and last Tuesday, HBO announced it was joining them, offering the HBO Max service direct to New Zealanders online from mid-year, and not on Sky's Neon platform. Just 2 minutes after that statement arrived in our inbox, there was one from Sky saying it has decided not to renew its agreement with HBO Max for content, all part of a broader entertainment strategy refresh, according to Sky Chief Executive Sophie Maloney, and she was sticking to that on the News Talk ZB Drive show.
This must be gutting.
No, it's not actually. I think it's been pretty well signalled that Warner Brothers Discovery were thinking about going direct, but also we've shared with our shareholders, particularly at our annual shareholder meeting, that the Neon subs weren't where we wanted them to be. And also we've been doing a huge amount of work on our entertainment strategy because we want to have a constant drumbeat of titles for our customers.
And they would be drumming up that content from other sources, Sophie Maloney said. And on Thursday, Sky said it had deepened its deal with Sony Pictures Television for new hit shows and archive stuff. Well, time will tell if Sky's evolved content offering, as they call it, is enough to ward off the dreaded churn of its subscribers who will be able to get HBO stuff direct from them from mid-year. And for viewers, it means more choice, but also more subscriptions to pay if they want more of it. And according to Business Desk tech writer Peter Griffin, many of us just don't want any more. In an article called When Streaming Eats Itself, he said that what looks like another nail in the coffin of Sky's one-stop shop model might actually point to its future.
If you look at the comments around the news about Sky parting ways with Warner Bros. Discovery for HBO content, most of the comments were, oh, here we go, yet another platform that I'm going to have to subscribe to. So consumer attention is increasingly fragmented across all of these streaming platforms that are trying to go it alone. There's a glut of good content. At one time, HBO, all the way back to Sopranos, where the tastemakers, they had the best content. That's no longer the case. A lot of good content is spread across these platforms, but the problem is viewing time is finite. Average screen time across all screens in the US, which is the biggest video streaming market, is 7.5 hours a day. It's massive, and it's plateauing. There's only so much time a day we can spend looking at screens. The trend is increasingly towards user-generated content on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, and the rise of artificial intelligence is going to make it even easier for people to cheaply generate their own professional-looking video content. So
you mentioned The Sopranos there, the fact that they used to be tastemakers and set the standard for television. For example, one of the things on HBO Max is this show The Pit that you can currently get via Sky. That stars Noah Wyle. I guess now is probably in his 50s or something. When he was in his 20s, he was a star on ER that made a star out of George Clooney, and they had huge careers, and that show ran for years and years. Is that sort of thing just not able to happen anymore in this fragmented marketplace in terms of the creation?
It's just really hard in a crowded marketplace like this to break through, which is why, for instance, the Hollywood studios are sort of being bypassed, which is why we're seeing one of the biggest mega mergers in TV and film. Warner Bros. Discovery is Paramount and Netflix are trying to buy that company in a multi-billion-dollar deal, because all of these companies are looking at the cost of production, the billions you have to spend on creating shows and movies. It's just not really sustainable. So there'll be less content that's generated as sort of big tentpole shows and more licensing, and that will go for sports as well if some of these streaming platforms can get hold of sports rights, and they've definitely done that in the US.
Well, that sort of one-stop shop model that Sky ran for so many years when they didn't have online competition. But in your piece, you pointed to Sky in the UK, which is not the same company as Sky in New Zealand. It's actually owned by, I think, Comcast in the US, but offering a streaming bundle that has Disney+, HBO Max, Netflix and Hayu. How is it possible that all these differentiated streaming brands that attract their own subscribers on their own can be aggregated like this?
The main reason it's able to happen is Sky still has the rights to the Premier League football in the UK that paid £6.7 billion over 4 years for that in 2023. So there is still a loyal, hardcore audience on the Sky UK platform, as there is for Sky TV here in New Zealand, largely because Sky has locked in the All Blacks, Black Ferns and Super Rugby out to 2030 and paid a lot of money for that as well. So amazingly, despite the rise of streaming, these pay TV dinosaurs have managed to survive. And Sky UK, which has been very innovative on technology and digital platforms, has managed to do a deal with all of these players to say, we will come on board your old traditional platform. And the reason they want to do that is because the competition is so fierce, and they realize that they're not going to get, or very unlikely to get, a Sky UK subscriber to suddenly come over to Disney+. They would have done so already, and hopefully convert them into a full subscriber. And if Sky New Zealand can follow that and do it in an innovative way, I think that's probably the future of pay TV, returning to their roots as the ultimate aggregator.
And I suppose at this point we should mention that you are a shareholder in Sky TV New Zealand, but you're almost suggesting, I'm not suggesting there's self-interest in this, but you are almost suggesting or urging Sky in New Zealand to pursue that. But what would it physically look like if you're sitting down in front of a television? What would actually suit the New Zealand television viewer?
There will definitely be negotiations, I think, for a type of mega bundle that Sky UK is doing. Traditionally, Sky TV, I think, has collaborated with Sky in the UK on hardware development and that sort of thing. So they watch very closely what Sky UK is doing. Unfortunately, Sky New Zealand has been slow and not really cutting edge in terms of its technology development. It had a very painful gestation of its digital platforms like Neon, of its Sky boxes, to try and replicate what they've done in the UK, or what is going to be launched next month, which is one slick interface featuring all of these competing players, will take a lot of work, and that will be the big test for them. But I think people are willing to pay a reasonable amount a month if they can get it all in one place, and that's what will be driving, I think, Sky's strategy over the next few years.
So in the end, it's kind of a strange equation of, technology, people's time, their irritation about multiple subscriptions, and the amount they're actually prepared to pay. But it's probably the last one that will determine how successful any kind of bundle up could be.
Yeah, the big wild card is these mega mergers. So let's say Netflix is able to buy Warner Bros. Discovery and makes that irresistible to subscribers. That could change the game. But we haven't seen that to date. What we have seen is everyone wants to set up their own platform. And of course, Apple and Amazon, these are not profitable enterprises for them. They are doing this to lock people into the Apple or Amazon ecosystem. So it's a false economy, really. And Netflix and HBO and the others are having to compete with that. So Lots of money is being lost at the moment. Billions of dollars is being spent on content that they're not recouping. Something has to change. It's either mega mergers to improve the economics of this industry, or it's returning to that aggregation model where everyone goes onto one platform and gets a clip of the ticket.
Back to the future.
Pretty much.
That was Peter Griffin, tech writer at Business Desk. And finally on Mediawatch this week, it was the appalling weather rolling southwards down the country that dominated news broadcasts earlier this past week, including TVNZ's One News at 6. So other local news would have to be pretty startling to break up that.
And we'll go back to our weather coverage shortly, but first some breaking news. The New Zealand Sail GP team has been involved in a high-speed crash on Auckland's inner harbour. The Kiwis were going nearly 90 kilometres an hour when they lost control, colliding with the French boat during the third race of the New Zealand Grand Prix.
Well, those pictures of the Black Foils yacht slamming into the French one at high speed were chilling. A bit of a bummer for the thousands who'd flocked to the Auckland waterfront to see the Sail GP racing, but because they did flock there, it was still rated as a success for the city. And on 3 News, sports reporter Mitch Redman accentuated the positive, reporting that Sail GP and Auckland were on the verge of agreeing terms for the City of Sails to host the Sail GP again from next year. But getting a snappy soundbite out of Sail GP's boss Sir Russell Coutts was a tough ask.
Well, we're just trying to finalise the dates. Everything else is agreed, so it's pretty straightforward. We've just got to finalise the date. I think the benefits to the town are obvious, so yeah, hopefully we can sort it.
However, last Monday there was much more media razzmatazz for a sporting deal that is locked in for Auckland, an Australian State of Origin Series League game next year. Now, to announce that, 2 Aussie League legends were flown in for an early morning photo opportunity on Monday with the Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, and the Minister for Auckland Simeon Brown, and Tourism Minister Louise Upston, and Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown. Never on the field of Eden Park had so many politicians outnumbered so few sports people at a photo opportunity. And there was another one, National List MP Nancy Liu, capturing the moment on camera when the Prime Minister stepped up to shelter the visiting NRL executive Gary Weiss with an umbrella when a sudden shower started up during his speech. And then Nancy Liu posted it online with a message that was the social media equivalent of a patsy question in Parliament. The spin-off's Toby Manhire seized on the greasing with a tongue-in-cheek piece calling it the moment everything changed for Luxon, and it certainly tickled Wallace Chapman on RNZ's panel on Wednesday.
Now, the scene was captured best by Nancy Liu, a National Party List MP, who posted on social media, Facebook, "This is the Christopher Luxon I know," she said. While people were scrambling for umbrellas, the Prime Minister grabbed one and walked straight onto the stage, holding it over the speaker mid-speech.
That online post from Nancy Liu praising her leader ended like this.
That's leadership. Kind, grounded, energetic, action-oriented. My leader. Our Prime Minister. Sometimes the smallest gestures say the most.
And the selfless act wasn't nothing, but sometimes less is more. Sometimes a lot less.
What do you think, Joe?
Oh, I think if that is the bar we're setting for leadership, we should look at raising it. I agree with you, David. I think that post was over the top.
But they were going on about it again on RNZ National an hour and a half later with fresh pundits on the political panel show The Whip.
It's a bit sad when a List MP is treating him like Kim Jong-un and praising the dear leader.
Oh, that's a bit unfair. That's a bit unfair.
I love the fact check. I love the fact check of Nancy Liu's, her entire post.
Now, the fact check that TV journalist Ruani Pereira mentioned there was a pretty cutting takedown of Nancy Liu going over the top online. It was written for Stuff by its explainer editor Lloyd Burr, a former TV political reporter. And that included Nancy Liu's weird claim there that there were no cameras to capture Luxon's leadership moment. Her own post included her own photo, and the invited reporters and camera crews were there en masse. Politicians need to know there is a line between promotion and celebration and sheer brazen obsequiousness, Lloyd Burr said. And fair enough, but is the reaction to this also a bit over the top and a symptom of the hyperactive scrutiny that the state gets from the Fourth Estate these days? That's all for this week. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to the indefatigable and endlessly versatile Todd Zahner for once again supplying top-notch voiceovers. If you have any thoughts for us or ideas for us to follow up, do get in touch. Email us, mediawatch@rnz.co.nz, or write us a letter, Mediawatch, PO Box 123 Wellington. Catch you again for Midweek Media Watch next Wednesday. In the meantime, follow Media Watch and listen on any podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode.